Na. Ayan na. Ayan na. Tama yung sinabi natin. Kahapon. Sino magiging National Security Advisor natin? So, mukhang eto na, finalize na isa sa mga panelists ng SMNI. Talagang masarap maging panelist pala dyan sa SMNI. Baka naman, baka naman. Meron na tayong Actually, narinig ko na may proposal na baka ako pwede replacement sa kanya. If I'm mistaken, I think si ma'am mismo ang nag-recommend. I don't know. I have to verify that just in case. O baka naman kung naging panelist tayo on SMNI at biglang natuwa si ano sa mga ano natin, baka may cabinet position na sana tayo. Kaya yun, never say no to SMNI. Yan ang future natin. Yan ang future ng the landscape. Yan, so katulad ng sinabi natin kahapon, si Ma'am Clarita Carlos, I call her mom because she was my former professor, mentor throughout the years. Obviously, nagkaroon kami ng mga differences on certain issues, particularly on the whole revisionist, denialist issue. But nonetheless, I'm very grateful for all the help and all that she gave me. And of course, as she has said, yes, we were the top student, true and all. But, that's not a biggie. Those were the days. Okay, we'll talk about it more shortly. So ito na, meron na tayong confirmation na Professor Clarita Carlos will take over as a National Security Advisor soon under the Ferdinand Marcos Jr. presidency. All right, now I'll give you some background about her in terms of why she, I think, is very well suited for the job. But of course, we'll also discuss some more, important issues, some tricky issues, contentious issues. Katulad ng issue ng red tagging, yung issue sa BARM, sa Mindanao, etc. And whether this is the best way forward. We'll also look at a bit of history, sino mga dating naging National Security Advisor natin. I'll give you some idea about what is the job of a National Security Advisor. So just to give you some known names as National Security Advisors in the past, not in case of the Philippines per se, but globally, Henry Kissinger. So if you're familiar with Henry Kissinger, before he became the very famous diplomat or infamous diplomat that he became, or he came to be known, Henry Kissinger was the National Security Advisor of President Nixon, Richard Nixon. And then later on, he became both National Security Advisor and Foreign Secretary, or Secretary of State in the case of the U.S. No, so that was quite an unprecedented position of influence. And then the other famous guy, actually I have their books here, is Zbigniew Brzezinski, right? So Kissinger used to be a former professor at Harvard, where he took his undergraduate and graduate school. Kissinger, of course, came from Germany. He has a Jewish German background. He had to escape Germany because of the whole Nazi situation. Later on, he came back. He helped the liberation of Europe by joining the American troops. Batang-bata pa siya nun. And then later on, he studied in Harvard, political science, and then his PhD there. He had a short stint in academe, but he found the academe too restrictive and too petty. He said something like, in the academe, the stakes are so low, that's why the disputes are so hot, or something like along those lines. So he eventually joined the realm of politics. It was very important in terms of shaping certain presidential campaigns, including campaign of Richard Nixon. So Kissinger eventually becomes a national security advisor and also becomes a Secretary of State. And since then, since his important role in the 1970s in terms of normalizing ties between US and China, naging arguably the most consequential diplomat in the 20th century, si Kissinger. We can have a debate about that. I would say the 19th century, siguro si Metternich, the Austrian diplomat who was behind the Concert of Europe, who helped end the Napoleonic Wars, and who, by the way, was super idol ni Kissinger. Kissinger's PhD and first major book or volume was actually on the role of this diplomat called Metternich, right? Austrian diplomat who played a role in terms of bringing peace to Europe through a Concert of Europe. So Kissinger was shaped by that. Later on, despite all odds, he became a very influential figure in American and global politics. So the National Security Advisor job is very, very important, especially in the case of America. As for Brzezinski, another former immigrant, in this case from Poland, who had a lot of anger at America, kung familiar kayo dun sa nangyari sa Afghanistan, which was Reagan administration and Carter earlier, tinulungan nila yung mga Afghan freedom fighters, Mujahideen, to defeat the Soviet Union. a big mind behind it was Brzezinski, and as a Pole, of course, he hated the Russians. So he was one of those guys who said during the Carter administration, especially, let's go and help this Mujahideen because the enemy of our enemy is our friend. In this case, our primary enemy is Soviet Union, the Russians. The enemy of our enemies is Mujahideen, no problem, they're our friend. Of course, later on they came to regret it. But you see, national security advisors are very, very important. They don't have the same profile as the, let's say, foreign affairs secretary who have all of these bonga talks, they go all around the world, etc. Or they don't have the profile of even some of the technocratic cabinets. But sila yung nagpo-form ng policy, national security policy thrust ng isang administration. And sometimes they're even closer to the president and the executive, the chief executive, rather than the diplomats. And in this case, we'll discuss this very shortly, but ang sense ko is with Ma'am Carlos, she'll be very key advisor on national security and foreign affairs issues to incoming President Marcos Jr. Ngayon pa lang may statements na si Ma'am Clarita Carlos on our relations with China, right? So that tells you that she'll be a big figure. She's going to be perhaps more consequential than other national security advisors we have had. No offense to the others. I think she comes in with a lot of fire. She comes with a lot of confidence, pizzazz. Marcos obviously likes her a lot. We saw that during the SMNI debates. Tuwan-tuwa sila and all of that. Yung nga, sayang di tayo nag-panel. Baka naman may cabinet position din tayo sana. As if naman. Diba? Okay, narinig niyo yan. Wag nyo ano niya. Okay. So yan, let's go to this very quickly, no? So obviously, yung announcement kahapon was dalawang cabinet position, hindi lang isa, di ba? So yung isa pang cabinet position was DAR, Department of Agrarian Reform. But we can discuss yung issue ng agrikultura at saka land reform among others more siguro in a separate episode. Today, pag-usapan muna natin itong National Security Advisor position at ano yung magiging challenges moving forward. Again, very quick, ano lang to, just an overview yan. Of course, as we move forward and ahead, we'll have more ideas about anong gagawin ng bagong National Security Advisor natin at ano yung mga challenges, pros and cons. Alright? Okay, first of all, going back to Professor Clarita Carlos, obviously a lot of you know her thanks to bloggers and vloggers and you know, to the SMNI debates and all of that. Well, I'm happy for her that she's getting the kind of public recognition and all that perhaps she felt she deserved all along. She taught in UP Political Science Department for a very, very long time. And then she retired, I think 2011 or 12, so a long time ago. So nung pa-retire na siya, I had her as my professor in two subjects, geopolitics at saka yung methods and research in political science. This is graduate school na with her. We had very good relationship, you know, as student and professor, and later on as friends in a way, collegial. One thing I think that I really appreciate with her was, eto na lang sabihin ko, ayoko na magpangalan ng tao, but okay. Yes, I think there were many students and even some professors who were intimidated by me because I'm the last student you wanna have. Okay, ako yung tipong estudyante na, sir, parang kulang tong syllabus natin. I think kailangan nating dagdagan ito. Or sir, parang hindi sapat yung explanation dito. Alam mo yung ganun ako estudyante, makapal ang mukha ko talaga. In fact, alam ko na may mga ibang estudyante na nagda-drop kung alam nila nandun ako sa class. Undergrad pa lang nangyayari na yun sa akin. So, medyo notorious po tayo. So, I'm a kind of student who, you know, kung mali ka or tingin ko mali ka, I'll point it out. Wala akong pake, diba? Like, marunong ako eh. So, medyo mayabang tayong estudyante. But you know what? First meeting pa lang namin ni Ma'am Carlos. Late pa yata ako noon. Walang ya. And I was a working student too. Of course, I was working in the government in certain capacity, etc. I was advising legislators, etc. So I think I was late, and then I come in, and then within like 10-15 minutes, eto na kaagad, nagdi-disagree na ako. I'm not sure about that. So medyo, it was actually a class on methods. It's social science methods. It's not even a class on geopolitics, which by the way is what I've been doing since I was like 6-year-old, right? So ibang usapan na yan. Pero itong class was actually about research methods. So it's about philosophy of science, etc. So ako, yabang ang pasok ko. I said, I'm not sure about that, ma'am. Ganito, ganyan. You know what was her reaction? She liked it. She liked it very much. After that, parang lalo kami naging close. Parang mas na-impress siya. And after that, she kept on asking me questions, asking me my views, and very, very respectful. And that for me was a breath of fresh air. I'll be very honest about that. And I'm not saying it because NSA na siya and all of that. I mean, I just have to give credit where credit's due. Because I had an experience, I'm not gonna name names, with some other professors. There was one professor, I raised some issues with her syllabus and her framing of the syllabus and the topic. You know what she did? She emailed, oh, oops, I already said the gender, okay. Ano ang ginawa niya? Yan ang maganda sa Tagalog, eh, walang, hindi gender. Ano ang ginawa niya? In-email niya ako at sinabi niya, baka gusto mo mag-drop sa class na yan kung hindi ka believe sa syllabus or something like that. Okay, I'm not gonna say who is this person. Alright? I'm not even, wala na. Anyway, so I had very bad experiences in the past and some of it is my own fault kasi medyo mayabang din ako estudyante. And I think I robbed, you know. Anyway, I'm not gonna say more kasi papasok na tayo sa medieval politics and all of that. I don't want to get into that. Alright? I'm so grateful that I got a chance to teach in Ateneo, La Salle, San Beda, PUP, many schools, and you know, a number of other schools also, etc. So I'm very glad about that. I don't want to go into the internal medieval debates in academia and all. I'm so grateful that I'm a vlogger, that I'm a columnist, I'm a global columnist. I do all of these things. So I don't want to get involved in these things. All right. Okay. So going back to this again, that's what I'm saying. That's why I really like talang boom, talagang we sobrang ganda nung ano namin, first interactions pa lang namin ni Ma'am Carlos. Like she liked my independent spirit. Yung nakita mo niyo sa kanya sa SMNI, yung the way na ginaganyan lang niya yung mga kandidato. Guess what? Imagine a version of that but estudyante. That was me, right? Ako yung estudyante na hindi yan tama, hindi pa. Alam mo yung ganun ako. Ganun ako estudyante noon. Pero mabait akong teacher, ito Yes, may mga binabaksak tayo kasi kung may nag-plagiarize ka or may ginawa kang kalokohan, you're failed. At least, And in the past, in one school, I'm not gonna say one school, may na-fail akong student dahil may cheating na nangyari. Kinausap pa niya yung presidente ng university, kinausap pa niya isang congressman, whatever. I was just a new professor then. And inis na inis ako because I felt parang binubully niya ako dahil bago lang ako, hindi ako tenured and all. But I held my ground. I said, no way. Nag-cheat tong mga to, disciplinary. Sorry na lang. Kasalanan nila yan, di ba? Kasi affected na with graduation, blah, blah. Kasalanan nila yan, di ba? So very early on, nung nobody pa ako, I mean, I'm not saying I'm somebody now, but nobody pa ako, I held my ground. So I was a very independent-spirited person, and I think Ma'am Carlos saw that in me. And then later on, nung na-class pa kami ng geopolitics, ayan na, beshi na, kasi talagang, syempre, love niya yan, love ko rin yan. So parang the way we talk was almost collegial. And then, it just happened that, I got uno, the highest grade in both classes, etc. But that's besides the point. And then later on, after that, she was advising me on a number of issues in terms of career paths, in terms of, there are certain things I can say, but I don't want to go into it because ayoko na magsalita kasi there are other things involved. I don't want to, let's just put that aside. I don't want to get there. Let's just keep it between me and Ma'am Carlos. Just keep away the other people. Although she made certain references to the other things, you can check it on her post. And how she stood for me and all, and I'm grateful for that. Anyway, going back to this, ayan na, delikado na tayo. Going back to this, actually, she even gave me like mga first articles na sinusulat ko on the Diplomat magazine, yung mga ganun, yung mga nagsisimula pa lang ako, mga 2012, 13 pa lang yan, 2013, mga ganun, di ba? She was there, she was helpful to me, so for many years, we were, she was a mentor. Of course, my primary mentor was Walden Bell, and I'm very, very grateful to him. I mean, he taught me so many good things, good values, etc. But I have to give credit where credit is due. Mom Carlos was also there for me in many, sometimes even difficult moments, and also she gave many advice. She gave very good advice to me in terms of even the style of writing, how to make things more crisp, etc. So very, very conscientious mentor siya and supporter siya throughout those years. And I know that I'm not the only one. I know there were many other people that she also mentored throughout the years. And yun nga, it's just that once the whole Duterte, Marcos, and all things started, that's where medyo nagkakaroon ng differences. Although you can check naman, we were co-panelists with Tito Boy Abunda, hindi Tito Boy Soto. Tito Boy Abunda. Dun sa, anong program niya ulit ni Tito Boy? Yung political, what was that? Ano ulit yung program niya? Basta guest kami doon, di ba? Guest kami doon. And you can see very interesting exchanges namin, very respectful and all, no? With Tito Boy Abunda and then Ma'am Carlos, etc. But medyo online, nagkaroon kami ng medyo back and forth on this issue of Marcos, revisionism, etc. And you can guess where I'm coming from, right? You can guess where I'm coming from. But for me, we may have disagreements on certain political issues and all, but I'm not gonna cancel you. In the same way na you shouldn't cancel me just because pinoint out ko na fake news ang source mo, alright? Umpikon ka, problema mo na yan. But everything I say is based on facts and research. Sorry na lang, di ba? Gusto mo dun sa fake news blogger and all, junk food, go ahead. Be my guest. But you want real stuff, you want real talk, you want world-class analysis on the issues, welcome. Welcome, okay? You're welcome. But it doesn't mean na, for instance, may gusto, hindi yung Tito Boy na ano ha, yung showbiz. Yeah, bottom line. Yan, tama. Bottom line. The bottom line yan. Walang yan. Baka yung nilagay nyo yung ano yung showbiz na, yung mga fast talk. Hindi yun ha. Hindi kami nagganon ni Ma'am Carlos nun. Baka ngayon, I won't be surprised si Tito Boy will interview Ma'am Carlos ngayon. Dun sa show niya ngayon. Pero nung time, bottom line niya, tama na. Uy, mahusay si Tito Boy, in fairness, diba? I'm very impressed by his political analysis. I mean, you won't see a lot of that on screen, but, behind the scenes, we have had very, very detailed discussions. Mahusay si Tito Boy, very intelligent. And you could see very comfortable discussions namin. But anyways, check na yan. Andun si Ma'am Carlos, andun si Tito Boy, etc. I think Jesus Faustus, Attorney Faustus was also there. It was a good discussion. So yeah, we had some issues because I felt their stance on Duterte Marcos is like, patas kilay, parang gano'n. And then ngayon, appointed sa cabinet, taas na naman kilay ng kabila. SMNI, but okay, sabi nga nung isa, wag na tayo magtaas kilay. Alright, okay, support tayo, support. Alright, okay. So, that's gonna be a very short background and just ano lang, for the sake of transparency, right? Now, speaking of Dr. Carlos, of course, her background, she did a lot in political psychology and geopolitics, but she actually has a very deep history in the national security and foreign policy bureaucracy. For instance, noon pa lang, I think it's like 40 years ago or so, she was involved, or she was one of the brains behind the Foreign Service Institute in Department of Foreign Affairs, right? She was also, I think, the first female, the only female, perhaps even, that became the president of National Defense College of the Philippines, right? Or at least the first female, as far as I know. So, meron siyang background in terms of establishing essentially the think tanks in the foreign ministry and in the defense ministry, right? So malaki ang kanyang contribution dito sa industriya ng security studies and geopolitical studies. So kudos to ma'am, right? And I think that's unfortunately because of all of these bloggers and all of this blah blah blah, medyo na-dilute. And I'll be honest, ito ang pinaka-hate ko sa panahon natin, okay? There are things I like, but there are things I really hate sa panahon natin. Sa panahon natin kasi kung parang hindi ka bardagulan, balahura, parang hindi ka mananotice eh. Walang yan. Or kung wala kang trolls to do that for you. Wala. Yung iba kasi, kunyari mabait, pero they're outsourcing it to their trolls and all. So, ang problema dito is, many of us, including myself, we are known by our balahura comments, but we're not known by our serious work, right? A lot of people make comments and all, parang, sabi pa niya, self-proclaim. Self-proclaimed dapat. But anyway, parang sini-self-proclaim analyst niyo ako. Parang, hello, excuse me, do you even know about, my H index or you know what I'm saying? Do you know about in my 20s I was writing academic books, I'm like, what are you talking about? So ito yung mga ignoramos, sorry to say it, na all they know about a person is just, negative things they see or the fake news about me from all these junk food bloggers and trashy people, right? Sorry for saying that. So, ito yung nagiging problema. So, a lot of more intellectually oriented, let's just put it that way, not to be overly pretentious, people or get to be known. They're known because of the craziest comments about them or the craziest comments that was quoted out of, I don't know, 2 paragraphs they said. And that includes me. Like last week, binabalahura ako kasi may interview ako dun sa One News with the Chiefs. May sinabi ako ukol sa role ni Sara Duterte sa victory ni Marcos. And then, na-quote lang isang part na kung saan sinabi ko na parang without Sara, there'll be Marcos. But there was a context. Yung quote na yan, nako po, binash-bash tayo about that forever. Tapos ako parang taas kilay na naman ako dito. Tapos, meron pa naman, basta yung ganun yung parang, there's just a quote, they just read the quote and then they make a judgment about your entire intellectual history. And napakatamat pa naman yung mga tao. Alright? Ayan, nagagalit na si Mike. Okay. Now, why is this relevant? Because, sabi ko nga, if you look at Ma'am Carlos, she's known in many circles because of the online stuff. But you actually have to give her credit by looking also at her background in terms of her contribution to the growth of institutions like FSI, like National Defense College of the Philippines, etc. Okay? Now, gets mo, there's a tie back. Ayan kasi masyado kayong atat. Hindi ito digression. If I've noticed, there's never a digression with me. Everything is gonna be connected with each other. Alright? It's a Socratic style. Alright? Socratic method tayo. Everything is connected. Just wait. Wait lang ha. Kaya inis na inis ako dun sa mga nag-check ng papers. Hindi pa nila nabasa, may comments na dito. But you have to explain this. Parang, wait lang, parating na siya. Parang gano'n. Ayun, nairita akong gano'n. Parang, kaya nga, one of the things you do in academic papers and all, you signpost right away. Like, this is what I'm gonna discuss in this chapter. Boom, 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 then you go there. Para hindi mo nakakairitang tao. Nagka-comment sa taas, di pa binasa sa baba. Kasi papunta na nga tayo dyan eh. Papunta na tayo sa exciting part, guys. Papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part. Okay? So, yun ang pinag-usapan natin, guys. Alright? Makinig kayo sa akin. Walang yan. So, in short, Ma'am Carlos is not some, vlogger, pet analyst, blah, blah, blah. I understand yung frustrations vis-a-vis her, including from some of my colleagues and friends and former professors, others, you know where, right? I understand that. I myself have had disagreements with her. I have raised some issues with her, some of the seeming revisionist statements she made, if not denialist. I completely understand that. At the same time, that shouldn't take away from her the legitimate contribution she has made to the development of our national security and strategic studies bureaucracy, right? That's my point. That's my point. I am not saying perfecto siya. At the same time, I think it's unfair also to dismiss all of these achievements and contribution because of disagreements we have what she has been saying more recently or in the recent years, etc. You have to criticize what has to be criticized, but you have to give credit where credit is due. Alright? Now, gets nyo pinagsasabi ko dito, so hindi digression yung ginagawa ko. I was trying to explain to you that in our current information ecosystem, the problem is that people get to be known because of the most outrageous quotes about them or quotes from them. And very few people pay attention actually to the whole body of work or contributions of an individual. Na nare-reduce lang tayo sa isang quote, sa isang imahe, sa isang picture, sa isang kalokohan, etc. That's the problem we have with this era we have. Everyone has their 15 seconds of fame, and then if that 15 seconds is bad, nako po, that's it. When in fact, the life shouldn't be like that. And as voters, as citizens, as adults, guys, we have to do our due diligence. Hindi tayo mag-judge ng ibang tao base lang sa... Now, ibang usapan na po, yung mga vloggers talaga na walang contribution sa buhay, biglang naging vlogger, alam na this, alam na nangyari, and then biglang may million followers, etc. I'm not talking about those people, alright? Those people, a lot of them opportunists, may mga bayaran, etc. Let's be honest about it, okay? I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who you only know about them now because of all of this online stuff and some of the crazy stuff, right? But let's not forget these people have made so many good contributions throughout the years. That's what I'm saying. That also should matter. Also should matter. So it shouldn't be an either or. It should be the whole picture that we look at. All right? Okay. Now, she didn't get the the foreign affairs position. Now, as I said, Teddy Boy Locsin, might stay over for some time before someone else take over. As I said, even the name of Harry Roque has been percolating there, which was, wow, surprise. So just in case it happens, don't be totally surprised. I think Babe Romualdez, for me, was a great guy to take over, but I think he's just doing such a good job in DC. He should just stay in the DC na lang daw. And then, there's also one possibility that the career diplomat will take over, either temporary or more long-term. So binigay na lang, actually, it's not na lang, it's still a secretary position, yung National Security Advisor kay Ma'am Carlos. Now, I don't know if the NSA also goes through commission and appointments. I think it's straight na lang. So it's a much more closer position to the president. Now, and the thing with the National Security Advisor is that they're also in charge of coming up with the national security papers, defense papers, documents like that. Now, yung so yung tinatawag na National Security Strategy, all right? NSS. So I think for a long time, wala tayong ganito. Nagkaroon lang few years ago. So yung former the Deputy National Security Advisor, some great admiral folk, he gave me a copy of that. I have a copy of that, yung mga latest National Security Advisor natin. But I hope under Ma'am Carlos, we'll have much more regular publications of our national security strategy and level up ng level up ng level up yan. Kasi dito sa national security strategy, dito natin makikita anong magiging prioridad ng parating na administrasyon pagdating sa pagdating sa kanyang strategiya para protektahan yung ating yung karagatan, protektahan yung ating teritorya, yung ating sovereignty. So yung mga ganitong usapin, no? So doon sa national security strategy makikita natin yan. So I look forward to a good, comprehensive, sensible national security strategy paper under the aegis or leadership of Ma'am Carlos as the incoming National Security Advisor. Kasi dito natin makita, ano bang stance sa China? Is China number one external threat? Or China is one of many threats? Are we gonna engage with China as what, right? As a strategic rival, as a competitor, as a primarily a partner rather than competitor? Is it competition? Is it cooperation? Is it competition? Is it rivalry? Is it threat? So yan, makikita mo. Number two, makikita mo rin sa domestic security issues. And not to mention issues, non-traditional security issues, cybersecurity, climate change. Ang daming issues yan. Environmental security, human security, yung counterterrorism issues, napakamahalaga yan. Again, kasama yan sa national security strategy at saka kasama yan dun sa realm of expertise or jurisdiction ng National Security Advisor. Kasama din dyan yung peace process natin sa Mindanao. In fairness kay Tatay Digong, let me be fair about this. I think President Duterte did a very good job of using the bully pulpit to push for peace process in Mindanao. That's a good job, President Duterte. On that, I am with you and I support you. I think that you did a pretty good job, but your handling of Marawi was horrible and the reconstruction is terrible. Nonetheless, the BARM issue, the referendum, etc. went pretty okay. Now, mahalaga na yung next national security strategy natin is also focused on making sure tuloy-tuloy itong proseso ng peace building, no, and peace enforcement dyan sa Mindanao para hindi tayo magkaroon ng giyera at problema. Kasi ganito guys kung magulo sa loob ng Pilipinas, kung magulo dyan sa Mindanao, kung giyera dyan, mahina tayo pagdating sa mga kalaban natin abroad. In fact, nung panahon ng Cold War, let me tell you one thing, no? Mamaya na tayo magsaba in detail, but let me give you an overview. During the Cold War period, Malaysia was accused of funding mga insurgents sa Mindanao para hindi natin kukunin yung Sabah sa kanila. So they had an interest in internal conflict in the Philippines so that we're not a threat to them on the Sabah issue. Now, you can guess which countries have an interest in us having domestic conflict so that we cannot focus on the threat they're posing to us in the West Philippine Sea. You get what I'm saying? I'm not saying that's what's happening. What I'm saying is you have to get your domestic security right para makapag-focus tayo dun sa national security natin and external security threats. Kaya mahalaga magiging strategy ng incoming administration dun sa BARM issue, dun sa Mindanao peace process, and also dun sa issue ng mga komunista, right? NPA, how do we deal with them? Are we gonna have another war or peace process? Are we gonna divide and conquer? What strategy we're gonna have? So yan, mahalaga na yan. And historically, if you look at it, so I see some people saying, oh, but wala naman background si Ma'am Carlos in like military and all of that. Like that's as I told you, she has a lot of background in bureaucracy and all of that. So let me give you a list of mga dati naging National Security Advisor. So Ileto under Cory, Almonte under FVR, Aguirre under ERA. By the way, I'm getting this from our good friend James Miraflor, who was kind enough to post this on Twitter. Goles, Sir Roy Goles, our good friend of ours, God bless his soul, under GMA. Garcia under Pinoy. So a lot of them, you look at it, they have military backgrounds. Yeah, a lot of them. Goles, Garcia, a lot of them. Navy, Army, etc. Esperon, of course, under Duterte. So all of these people were ex-military. All of them. Ileto, Almonte, Aguirre, Goles, Garcia, and Esperon. All ex-military. And some of them even were, so in the case of Esperon, he went all to the highest levels dun sa AFP. Isa lang naging civilian natin, si Gonzales, Norberto Gonzales, under GMA. But I'm not sure, some people are saying he didn't end up the best, right? Yeah. Although in fairness, Sir Gonzales, he had some role in terms of negotiating peace process back in the day, I think Cory's day or something like that, right? So let's look at Ma'am Carlos. Obviously, she doesn't have a military or intelligence background, but she's a very intelligent person. She has a background in bureaucracy, National Defense College, etc. She knows the lay of the land. She knows the lay of the land. And in fairness, her take on issues is not your standard militaristic way, which I think is a good thing. At the same time, of course, she also thinks a little bit outside the box, and she's quite confident about it, right? So let's look at, for instance, the statement she has made on the issue of red tagging. No? So, malaking problema yan kasi naakusa ang NSA or the defense establishment of engaging red tagging in a way to intimidate people who are sympathetic to or supportive of, let's say, more progressive leftist groups, including the ones who are not involved in an armed struggle or any kind of insurgency. So ito po yung sinabi ni Ma'am Carlos, incoming National Security Advisor sa issue ng red tagging and human rights sa ilalim ng incoming Marcos administration. Siguro, let's not use labels. Wala naman tayong makikita ng ganyan. We keep on labeling people. Okay, yun ang sinabi niya sa GMA kanina. Sabi niya, pakilaman lang natin, let's put our energy on operational aspects of really rooting, looking at the roots of insurgency, yung lack of opportunity, yung injustice na hindi na-address. So this is exactly what I've been saying. The best way to address insurgency, separatism, crisis, mga problem na yan is pupunta ka dun sa ugat ng problema. So that's a good thing. Obviously, how we operationalize it, that's another issue. So in English, let's put our energy on operational aspects of really looking at the roots of insurgency, like the lack of opportunity and justice, which are not being addressed. So instead of just red tagging anyone who's asking for land reform, who's asking for distributive justice or proper redistribution, ang dapat gawin natin is tignan natin yung ugat ng problema. So that covers, according to Ma'am Carlos, which is the standard thinking among academics and experts, the economic life of the country, issues like food, energy, water security. So national security ayon sa kanya is human security. Anong threat sa buhay mo? What is the threat to your life as an individual? That's something that you have to focus on. Ayon sa kanya, I'm sure right now malayo sa isip mo yung contested South China Sea, malayo sa isip mo yung Quad. They are too far away from your existence from day to day. So, okay, this is where perhaps I'll have some disagreements with her. But anyway, meron naman tayong DFA Secretary to deal with more external security and also DND Secretary. So mukhang what Ma'am Carlos is saying that we also have to focus on domestic security stabilization as much as we want to discuss on international security issues. At saka yung malapit sa puso ng tao, ano yung mga most urgent threats sa kanila. But at the same time, dapat tignan natin ugat ng problema, hindi surface level, hindi bara-bara. So I think that's quite an interesting thing for her to say. Now, on the South China Sea and China, as she said, critical engagement with China would be the way to go, and President Marcos already noted it will still be enhanced on all levels. So my understanding, critical in that sense means hindi tayo bulag-bulagan sa ating relasyon sa China. At the same time, wag naman tayo hater at no lang tayo, nega lang nega sa any cooperation with China. So we do cooperation, but calibrated. Actually, the term I suggest, Ma'am Carlos, is use calibrated engagement rather than critical engagement. Critical engagement kind of gives a certain notion, which I think is not in consonance with what you have been saying. So the term I think I will suggest is calibrated engagement. And that's the term actually I use. As opposed to President Duterte, which is love, love, love China, and then the adults in his cabinet had to correct him. So medyo bara-bara all over the place. But here, you're going to have a much more calibrated and focused approach. Again, we're not even in the early phase dahil this is still the incoming administration. But as early as now, we have to know the lay of the land para alam natin ano yung mga scenarios that we can look at, whether we should be worried, whether we should be encouraged, whether it's a mixture of two. These are the things that we have to discuss. No? But as I said, red tagging is a big concern because it can be easily abused to silence anyone who's raising legitimate questions about injustice, about oppression, about tyranny, about lack of economic opportunities in our country. At alam natin, unfortunately, all across our country, napakalaking problema yan. Now, there's a question whether she will be a hawkish NSA advisor. I think it's really a case-to-case basis. But so far, if your focus is on human security, she actually seems to me almost dovish. So she might be a hawk in terms of her demeanor and confidence, and some would even say hubris. But actually, I think in terms of policy, she could have a much more calibrated, almost NEDA-like approach to national security. And in fact, mahalaga dun sa ating national security strategy is this is coordinated with LGUs, also coordinated with NEDA, so that we have a comprehensive economic and social response dito sa mga ugat ng insurgency and problems sa ating bansa. So it has to be interagency, it has to be coordinated. And if you guess where I'm getting these ideas, I've been to Mindanao. I've met generals. I've met officials on the ground. I've given lectures a lot, including at the National Defense College of the Philippines quite regularly. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not coming out of nowhere. This is based on constant year on year conversation as an academic, as a journalist, as a columnist, etc., as an advisor with folks in the Philippine Military Defense Establishment. I've given talks with all branches of the state, the militaries, are Army, Navy, Air Force, lahat na yan. So I've had conversations with them. And I'm sure a lot of them will be happy to see intellectually inclined and veteran people in charge of key positions of the cabinet government. Of course, we'll have more discussions as DND and DFA also get clarified. One possibility is that both Lorenzana and Locsin will stay until a transition could happen next year pa. For me, that's a good stuff. I'm okay also with the Lorenzana and uh, and uh, and Teddy Boy Locsin staying there. Dami ko si Boy. Mamaya yung Teddy Boy, Tito Boy to Soto. Ayan. Okay, so that's just an overview of that. And sense ko naman is the influence of an NSA depends on the degree to which they're close to the president or the chief executive. And in this case, mukhang yung rapport between Ma'am Carlos, who has been involved in this, let's call it just this industry and this advocacy since the Marcos Senior days, obviously has a very good relationship with Marcos, who seems to almost look up to her. I mean, nakita natin, di ba, sa SMNI, I'll send you papers, yes, ma'am, ganun. So, obviously, there's almost a deference to her. He didn't give her the DFA, so that's interesting. But as an NSA, still, she could be very, very influential if indeed she enjoys that level of respect and deference from the incoming president. All right? Okay, on that note, do you guys have any questions? Ayan, yung mga tanong nyo dyan. May mga bago kayong tanong. Thank you. By the way, thank you very much sa mga nag-join sa atin from all over the world. Yes, Ida, calibrated engagement. I think that's a more correct term rather than critical engagement. That kind of gives a... I mean, I am for critical engagement, but that doesn't seem to be the strategy of Marcos, so let's not oversell it. All right? Are there other questions? All right. So I hope I provided you a kind of a background that you're not going to see in any of the coverage. Neither the bloggers nor the mainstream people can give you that. Maybe other academics can give you that. But in this case, yon. Anong sinasabi mo, Jella? Sinong pinapagalitan mo? I hope hindi ako, ha? Alright. Okay. Let me... Dito, ba't balong tang dito? Nasaan na kayo? Ayan.